Good evening and welcome to the November 12th, 2020 meeting of the Prince George's County Board of Education. Before we begin our meeting, I would like to ask everyone to please turn off any wireless communications devices to avoid interfering with our meeting. At this point, I want to call on my colleague, Ms. Sonia Shepard, to announce a new addition to the Board of Education's meeting protocol. Ms. Shepard.
Thank you. Gracias. Interpretación simultánea en español está disponible para esta reunión. Llame al 508-924-5155 para escuchar de nuevo. Por favor, llame al 508-924-5155. Quiero agradecerle al Dr. Thornton, a la doctora Dr. Golson, que por historia estas llamadas se van a poder estar en español en este futuro y mientras las tengamos las reuniones, así que estoy bien agradecida de que esto se puede hacer en el condado porque a esto les ayuda a nuestras familias que solo hablan español. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shepard. And on behalf of the board, Dr. Golson, thank you and your staff for making this possible. And thank you, Board of Education, for permitting this to happen. It is indeed an historic development. At this point, I'm going to ask our board colleague, Mr. K. Alexander Wallace, to please lead us in the board's prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, steer us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. And before I call on Ms. Tate to call the roll of the board members, I want to thank Ms. King, you and your staff for preparing for our board meeting, Ms. Tate, and all of the staff members for doing the behind the scenes work that goes into these complex board meetings. So thank you all very much for that. Now, Ms. Tate, would you please call the roll of the Board of Education?
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Ms. Ahmed.
Here.
Ms. Boozer Struther.
Here.
Mr. Burrows.
Here.
Ms. Jackson.
Present.
Mr. Montero.
Here.
Mr. Murray.
Here.
Mrs. Queen.
Present.
Mrs. Shepard.
Here.
Mr. Swan. I'm sorry, did I hear Mr. Swan?
Yep, I'm there. Present. Can you hear me?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Thomas.
Present.
Mr. Valentine.
Here.
Mr. Wallace.
I'm present.
Mrs. Williams.
Present.
And Dr. Thornton.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tate. Colleagues, will now turn our attention to item 2.5 on our agenda, which is the adoption of the agenda for our meeting. The motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved by Ms. Queen and seconded by Ms. Williams that we adopt the agenda for November 12th. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, no. Ms. King, let the record reflect that the decision is unanimous. Thank you, colleagues. We'll now ask you please to turn your attention to item 2.6, which is the Board of Education's minutes for October 21st. A motion is in order to adopt the minutes of October 21st.
So moved. Second.
It's properly moved and seconded by who moved it? Ms. Jackson, and seconded by Ms. Queen. Hearing no modifications to the minutes of October 21st, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, no. Ms. King, let the record reflect that the vote of the board is unanimous. Colleagues, I have only a brief chair's report. I'd like to ask you to join me in honoring the memory of a staff member and staff member families who passed since our last board meeting. Mary James, the aunt of Trina James, who is our board executive secretary. David Little, is a student at the James Madison Middle School. Dontrell Watson is the son of Toledo Shank, security investigator at the Central High School. Angela Angie Hamilton, the sister of Patricia Patty Phillips in the Office of Student Appeals. Albert R. Price, Sr., is a custodian at our Suitland High School. And Mary Brady, the mother of Dr. Kathleen Brady, principal of the Calverton Elementary School. And finally, Pamela T. Allen, a paraprofessional at our Duval High School. Would you join me in a moment of silence for each of these individuals? Thank you very much. I'd ask you to please continue to keep the families of these individuals in your thoughts and prayers. To the public, please check our website for information regarding upcoming board meetings. We have our 3 committees, and I really want to draw your attention to our committees. We really appreciate the public viewing those 3 committee meetings and observing and then responding to the deliberations of those committees. Our Policy and Governance Committee, which is chaired by Ms. Boozer Strother and vice chaired by Ms. Ahmed, will meet on November the 16th. So please sign up to observe that meeting. Our Academic Achievement Committee, which is chaired by Ms. Shepherd and vice chaired by Mr. Montero, will meet on November the 17th. And then we will have our CEO FY22. This is very important to the public. Our CEO FY22 operating budget presentation to the Board of Education on December the 10th. That will start our FY22 budget cycle. Zoom login details will be posted on the Board of Education's website. And so to the public, please go there, access that information. If you have any difficulty accessing us, please reach out to the board office or individual board members and they'll make sure that we respond. I want to, before I go to our CEO for her report, I want to acknowledge what I consider to be another indication of the uniqueness of this Board of Education and its regional status. Our colleague, Mr. Paul Montero, has been asked to serve at the national level in terms of being on the Education Review Task Force, selected by the president of our country. And so we're very proud of you, Paul, for the role that you play. So go forward and I won't make a political comment. I'll leave it at that. Congratulations. Dr. Gosen, at this point, would you?
Thornton,
Yes.
before we move on, I have a question concerning the public meeting, I guess, of clarification so the public would know. I know you said a Zoom information will be given out. I just want to make, because a lot of times we have public hearings, public isn't able to actually see or speak. So is it going to be when they register to speak, it's going to be given out to the people who register to speak, or is this going to be given out for everybody to be a part of the Zoom? I just want to know how.
You mean in terms of the budget presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, I once when Ms. Williams and your committee make their presentation, we're going to make it very clear to the public. I won't preempt Ms. Williams, and you want to make it very clear to the public how they can engage with that process, because I'm pleased to serve with you and Ms. Williams and Mr. Valentine and Mr. Burrows on that committee. And we met, I want to get in front of Ms. Williams, but we worked hard to make sure that the public would not only have access to our deliberations of the board. So that'll come when Ms. Williams makes her presentation.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. As always, for those members of the public who signed up to provide written or electronic comments to this Board of Education, those comments are posted on board docs for review by board members and the public. So please, public, if you have not been following that input that we're receiving, please go there to do that. We've received several testimonies that have been posted on board docs, and I would encourage the public to continue to do that. Dr. Gosen, I'll go back now to your report, please, to the Board of Education.
Sure, thank you. Good evening. Last Friday, the Excellence in Education Foundation for Prince George's County Public Schools hosted its annual gala event, but in a virtual format. Thank you to our partners and student artists who donated their work and helped make this year's event a success. The event raised more than $178,000 that will enhance educational opportunities and provide scholarships for our students. Congratulations also to this year's alumni and distinguished community members who were inducted into the Prince George's County Public Schools Hall of Fame. As we continue to live, work, and learn virtually, I want to call your attention to our new online database that tracks COVID-19 related school and office building closures. This database is designed to provide families and staff with the latest information about our cleaning and sanitizing work. Please visit the PGCPS website for more information. I also want to encourage families to take advantage of additional learning resources through the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. CEO Roberta Phillips joined our distance learning town hall last week to share an array of programs available to children of all ages and English language learners. Don't forget, more than 7,000 students still need to bring their immunizations into compliance with state law. I want to remind our parents that just because we're in a distance learning model, your child is still required to be immunized. In partnership with the Prince George's Health Department and the Maryland Partnership for Prevention, we're continuing to host free immunization clinics in our high school wellness centers this month. Visit our immunization webpage for details, clinic schedules, and to register online. At this time, I'd like to share information about our recent distance learning survey. In October, we conducted a distance learning survey with parents and students to gauge how families are handling distance learning and how they feel about returning to school beginning next semester. In addition to the survey, I had a telephone town hall on November 5th to discuss those results with over 12,700 people joining the call. For the electronic survey, we had students in grades 3 through 12 receive a link to the survey via their PGCPS email accounts. And the Office of Communications invited parents to participate by sending a link to the subscribers of the emergency alert list, as well as posting the link on the social media webpage and our main webpage and our PGCPS Express newsletter for parents. The parent survey was also available in English, Spanish, and French. The survey administration window opened October 5th and closed October 18th. We received 10,972 responses from parents and 4,672 responses from our students. Families rely on effective communication from the district to learn how to access the services and supplies their students need to fully participate in their education. Overall, parent respondents believe that the district is doing a good or excellent job communicating important information. To make distance learning successful, students and families need technology in the form of devices and digital communication capabilities in their homes. 71% of the respondents, of parents and students, reported using a district-issued device for their students to use for distance learning. Of those that did not have a district-issued device, more than 90% have a family-owned computer, laptop, or tablet. More than 90% of our families say that their student has their own device, and less than 10% need to share devices. Please note that if you have a student sharing a device, please contact your school principal so you can get an individual device. Virtually all, more than 99% of our respondents say they have a home-based internet connection. More than 3/4 of parents report having a reliable internet connection in their homes. And about half of our student respondents say their internet connection is reliable. Those without an internet connection at home say they have either a district-issued mobile hotspot or they go to someone else's home. Overall, nearly 70% of parents respondents believe that the distance learning services their students are receiving are at least good, with more than 1/4 rating them as excellent. In terms of the question around the comfort level of in-person instruction, 67% of our parents feel uncomfortable or extremely uncomfortable returning their child to school. This is a higher percentage than our July survey, which indicated 46% of families prefer distance learning. Parent concerns include keeping a medically vulnerable student or family member safe, the ability for Prince George's County Public Schools to keep up with cleaning and sanitizing surfaces and potential poor air ventilation in school buildings, especially older ones, and the ability for students to adhere to the safety protocols for our younger students, such as mask wearing. Many parents expressed the desire to have the option to continue with distance learning when school begins to reopen, which we will continue to offer. For those families that select the option for hybrid learning, parents ranked important safety measures that they would like PGCPS to do. The most important factors are to provide immediate notification of positive COVID cases in a student's class or school, and having a detailed plan for addressing positive COVID cases within a school community. Thank you to all the parents and students that responded to the survey. Your responses and written feedback helps us to address your needs and to improve our distance learning experience. The full report, a summary of the report, and a PowerPoint displaying the results can be found on our website. Thank you, and this concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Golson, for that report. And thank you for your engagement on behalf of the board to the community regarding our distance learning and virtual education protocol. Colleagues, I would ask you now to turn your attention to our consent agenda. And Dr. Golson, I would ask you to please introduce for the board items 4.1 and 4.2.
Sure. Items 4.1 and 4.2 require approval, and they are Board Action Summary and Proclamation for Computer Science Education Week and Proclamation commemorating National School Psychology Week in Prince George's County Public Schools.
Thank you, Dr. Golson. A motion is in order, colleagues, regarding 4.1 and 4.2.
Moved. Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by Ms. Queen seconded. Who moved it? Ms. Buzustrella. Any questions about 4.1 or 4.2? Hearing none. Those in favor of passage, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing say no. Ms. King, let the record reflect that the board's position is unanimous on the consent agenda. Colleagues, would you please now turn your attention to item 4.3, which is a recommendation from our Operations, Budget, and Fiscal Affairs Committee, chaired by Ms. Williams and co-chaired by Ms. Queen. Ms. Williams, I'll now give you the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. I'm pleased to represent the OBAFA Committee, the Operations, Budget, and Fiscal Affairs Committee, with my Vice Chair, Ms. Belinda Queen, and Dr. Alvin Thornton, our Board Chair, the Vice Chair, Mr. Edward Burrows, and our at-large board member, Mr. Curtis Valentine. We've been busy since day one with all the work that we've been doing. Last month, at the last meeting, we provided a list of priorities that we approved and transferred to Dr. Golson to incorporate in the budget. And this meeting, in accordance with the policy 3130, we're ready to present our recommendations on the work sessions and budget hearings for this budget season. Typically, we would have 3 work sessions and board budget hearings because we wanted to provide the ability for the constituents to participate in all areas of the county. So we typically would have one in the north, central, and south. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we will adhere to the policy, which only requires 2 hearings, and we will have 2 hearings coming in the new year. The schedule that we have selected and we are recommending to the full board for approval is to have our first meeting January 19th and our second meeting February 2nd. The work session will be held similar to this format in Zoom, where the constituents can listen in to our comments and questions. And then the public hearing side will be set up in a format similar to a town hall, where they will be able to verbally state their issues and concerns or comments about the budget with a time limit. So just be prepared to get that information for the January 19th meeting and the February 2nd meeting. This concludes my report, Dr. Thornton, and I hope that the board will support this recommendation and approve it and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams and Ms. Queen and the committee for developing this recommendation for the board's consideration. Colleagues, a motion is not necessary, but a vote is in order. Are there questions about the committee's report or recommendation to the board? Hearing no questions about the committee's report or recommendation to the board, those in favor of the committee's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing the committee's recommendation, please say aye or no. Ms. King, let the record reflect that the board unanimously approves the OBAPA committee's recommendation as to how we will review the superintendent. I prefer that, the CEO's budget recommendation. Thank you, Ms. Williams and members of the committee. At this point, colleagues, would you please turn your attention to item 4.4? And I'm going to ask the chair of our Policy and Governance Committee, Ms. Boozer-Strother, with her colleagues to introduce item 4.4. Ms. Boozer-Strother.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Thornton. I'd like to start by acknowledging and thanking my colleagues on the Policy and Governance Committee, Board Member Ahmed, who serves as Vice Chair, and Board Members Thomas and Murray, and student member of the board, Ms. Jackson. The Policy and Governance Committee brings forward to our board colleagues the recommendation that Board Policy 5113, Student Attendance, Absence, and Truancy, be modified to include that the board strongly supports the CEO's consideration of additional reasons for lawful absences, including a broader definition of family that would include extended family, relatives, and close non-relatives whose death would permit the students to be lawfully excused from school, military-related visits, college visits, civic engagement activities, and student mental health days. Upon approval by the board, the policy will move to the 2-week public comment period. And these recommendations reflect the direction of PGCPS priorities as outlined in the educational equity policy passed by this board in April 2019. And I would like to acknowledge our colleague board member Wallace for his leadership on this policy that supports the holistic well-being of students. So thank you so much, Mr. Wallace. And I would also like to acknowledge student member of the board, Ms. Jackson, for putting forward the original motion at committee to add student mental health days. And a thank you to Dr. Goldson, who actually has already indicated to us priorities and procedures already in our original recommendations from a few months ago. So with that, I would ask that this move to public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Boozer-Strother and members of the committee for the deliberations that resulted in this recommendation to the board. Any questions of the committee regarding this? Hearing none, those in favor of moving this policy proposal to the public for comment, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, please say no. Hearing no opposition, Ms. King, let the record reflect that the board's vote is unanimous on this. So thank you very much, Ms. Boozer-Strother. Colleagues, we will now move to item 5.0 of the budget consent agenda. I'd like to have Dr. Goldson, if you'll introduce items 5.1, 5.2, 5.5, and 5.6.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if we could, can we pull 5.6? I have to do an abstention.
Dr. Goldson, would you introduce 5.1, 5.2, 5.5?
Yes, I will. Items 5.1, 5.2, and 5.5 requires board approval of the expenditure requirements for December 2020 and January 2021, as well as FY 2021 tax-exempt municipal lease purchasing finance for the procurement of replacement buses, non-bus vehicles, textbooks, and instructional technology.
Thank you. Colleagues, the vote is on 5.1, 5.2, and 5.5 as introduced by Dr. Goldson. Those in favor of approving those consent agenda items, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, no. Let the record reflect, Ms. King, that the votes on 5.1, 5.2, and 5.5 from the board is unanimous. And Ms. Ahmed has some questions about 5.3 and 5.4, and I'll ask for your questions about 5.3 first, Ms. Ahmed.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. Dr. Goldson, I want to thank you for answering a lot of my questions on this item and on the next item as well. I wanted to start off by saying that I think it's well and good that we have more organizations that can now work with our school district, and that's really good. I just have a couple of questions about the process for 5-3 and particularly what happened. Could you talk a little bit about why we had to do the recalculation in the first place?
Yes, as stated in the response provided to you. During the contract review, the purchasing department requested that the scores provided by the consultant should not be included. So they went back and recalculated by taking those scores out.
Okay, I wanted to ask, do all of our contract bid reviews involve consultants?
There are a few that that have them on, but we don't necessarily use their votes. In addition, there are times that we've done interviews and then we've had people to recuse themselves from the votes for interviews as well.
Okay, so then why was the consultant score removed in this particular instance?
We removed them for all candidates who applied, not just for these two. It's just that these two were inadvertently left on.
Okay, so all of the contracts, all of the RFPs that we go through, the consultant votes should not be counted?
I'm only referencing this one right now. There are cases where we have had an outside consultant, but in this case, they were not. And we inadvertently left them on for those two.
Okay, I guess it's still, I think, a little bit unclear to me why the votes, the consultant vote didn't count here versus other things. But beyond that,
we can get their response back to you.
Okay.
Yep,
And then
I have it originally.
the other question is, what is being instituted so that this doesn't happen again?
Well, we have a new director of purchasing, Mr. Stewart, and he has already hit the ground running and doing a phenomenal job. So not that the staff prior to that were not, but I believe having a new fresh set of eyes and a new set of standard operating procedures will ensure that this does not happen again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, the vote is on 5-3. Those in favor of passing 5-3, please say aye.
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 Those opposing, no.
I'd like to abstain.
And Ms. King, let the record reflect that the board's vote is unanimous with the exception of one abstention, Ms. Ahmed. Thank you, Ms. Ahmed. Colleagues, if you will please now turn your attention to 5-4, and Ms. Ahmed, you have a question.
Yes, for this one, Dr. Thornton, I just wanted to explain my vote to folks.
Please, please.
Colleagues, I think this is too big a change order. My belief is that the scope should have been better defined before the project was awarded to this architecture firm, and is very clear to me that the job of the system, the school system, is to develop the scope of any project, and it's the job of the contractor to execute it. And when you have the contractors developing and executing the scope, boom, we get a $684,000 amendment. And it's just too much for me to comprehend. Beyond that, I also wanted to remind folks that we approved a certain budget for this project just 2 months ago with the CIP. If you look at page A18, so Appendix A, page number 18 of the CIP, it says it right there in black and white that the budget for architecture and engineering fees for the William Schmidt Outdoor Education Center is $2.269 million. And if we approve this change order or this amendment to that's before us right now, that'll put us over $3 million. So that's, colleagues, I will not be voting for this because doing so it just doesn't make apt fiscal oversight for me. And I encourage you all to vote in the way that you see fit.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed. Dr. Golson, I want to thank you for interacting with Ms. Ahmed regarding this and doing your best to provide some background information. Before we vote, is there any comment from you, or if not, we'll proceed? And then I see two colleagues. Dr. Golson, do you have any comment? Okay, thank you. Mr. Valentine and then Ms. Queen.
I guess I was curious about Dr. Golson's comment or sort of explanation about the extent of the change order. Oftentimes there's an explanation about why this happens. I was curious whether there was one for this.
Yep. So when we presented to you all our recommendations to move forward to the county government, that was several months before this. And as always, we're continuing to make sure that we have a state-of-the-art upgraded Camp Schmidt facility. So as you all know, when we first do our initial projection, it takes a while for it to finally get to you all. And then obviously those projections end up being off due to the rise in cost or changes and modifications in order to make sure that we have like a state-of-the-art obstacle course, as well as sleeping units to meet the needs of non-gender conforming students who we want to make sure that they feel comfortable in that experience as well.
Thank you. Ms. Queen?
And mute myself. So, Dr. Golson, I'm hearing what you're saying, but I think the problem I have is that Ms. Ahmed, she noticed a lot of these things and she brings them back, and she rightfully should. And then you have to explain it when I feel like that this should have been addressed to the board before we get into a meeting like this, and then she have to ask for it to be pulled. So if we know changes like this have to be done for these reasons, why is it not brought to the board to let us know about these changes? Why do we have to get on a board meeting to find these changes out?
So actually, that's the purpose of us posting them in board action summary a week before the board meeting. And Ms. Ahmed did review, and she did provide questions, of which I did respond to her questions prior to the board meeting. What she is now stating is providing you all an explanation of why she's voting the way she is voting. But every question that Ms. Ahmed presented to me, she had answered prior to tonight's meeting. And I will do the same for all board members.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, for example, okay, what you just said to Mr. Valentine is that because technology and stuff has changed, I think because of the fact we voted on it a while back, I just feel like, and this is my feeling, that it should have been brought to the Board of Ed to say, you know what, you guys voted on this project, but because technology changed, I'm going to have to request more money. I just want to let you guys know why. And that should have been known to the whole board, not for it to been brought. And I'm just curious why you don't do that. You and your staff don't do that.
Let me clarify. I never said a change in technology. What I said was over time, an initial estimate around the cost to do the facility changes over time due to the cost that rises in construction and or the need to enhance facilities to meet the needs of our students in our community. Did not mention technology.
Okay,
once again, that honestly truly is what the purpose of you all getting those items well in advance is for, so that we can have those conversations before today's board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. And Ms. Williams, and then I think we can vote. I'm sorry, Mr. Thomas. Ms. Williams.
Joshua Thomas had his hand up first, so I'll, let him go.
Thanks, Ms. Williams. I'll be real quick. I was just going to state that I completely agree with Ms. Ahmed. Not only on this item 5.4, but for the exact same things that you stated for 5.3. You just got to me before that, but I got to it before I did. But I just want to say that I completely agree. I appreciate Dr. Golson, your explanation. But for it to be what seems to amount to about 25% of the initial cost of an increase, I am in agreement with Ms. Ahmed, and I won't be voting in support of this. So I just wanted to make sure colleagues know that I'm.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Ms. Williams.
Thank you. This conversation comes up all the time when you go through the process of designing and building a structure. It may be new to us, but as the process goes through, to make a change like this is a change that the owner has requested. So in order to have this change done, it's going to cost more. By the time it gets to us 3, 4, 5 weeks afterwards, it may appear that this is the first time that we're hearing something. So what I would like to be able to do is, in the OBAFA committee meeting, we have added 2 moments so that both the CFO and COO can talk about budget and CIP items. I would love for us to add 2 as an FYI, not as a item for discussion, but maybe they can report to us the anticipated change orders just in a list form. So if something comes up, the board members can have an opportunity to just see what are the upcoming change orders, so that it's not a surprise when it comes to the board. and they can ask questions well in advance of it coming to us. And so, Dr. Golson, I would love to sit down with you and sort of, craft that out so that it's not a presentation, it's just a document that is submitted in the OBAFA committee.
Excellent recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas and Ms. Williams and Ms. Queen. Colleagues, the vote is now
Dr. Gordon.
on. Oh, I'm sorry, who was that? Mr. Swan.
Yeah, question for you, Dr. Golson. Can you talk about if we don't approve this, what's the impact of the project? Does it revert back to the previous design? And just to be clear,
It does. And then there will be any modification.
of what? I'll say it again. I'm sorry.
It does. It'll revert back
We're
to
breaking up.
what we originally had with no modification.
Okay, and that means
Thank you,
that.
Mr. Swan.
I'm sorry. I got one follow up. So that means that, and I'm just looking through the document, that the new sleeping cabins and those things won't happen. And so I think
Correct.
I know it would helpful for me to understand what we're getting, right? Because I think this is one of those moments where on the surface, it may look one way, but if we don't do this, folks just need to understand what we're paying that we're getting, right? And so when it comes to we have paid for something that doesn't meet the needs from a lot of different perspectives of our community, our students, and families, I think folks just need to be very clear. I don't know if you can just paint that picture a little bit better for us. I just don't see that level of detail in a document on board docs. Thanks.
Actually, it's in the attachment that comes along with it. And we, just for our community's information, William Schmidt Center is our outdoor education center. We have students who at a specific grade level go and spend the night overnight at Camp Schmidt. They do obstacle course events with their classmates. They learn about the environment and they do stay overnight. So this upgrade will help with their with the confidence course, their trail bridge, the campfire experience, as well as the villages, which we call their sleeping arrangements. Those documents are uploaded if community members want to review. We want to make sure that the site is handicap accessible, as well as making sure that we provide sleeping accommodations for non-gender conforming students as well.
Thank you.
Without that, it won't be upgraded and it will just be probably just renovation of the existing.
Thank you. Ms. Ahmed and then Mr. Thomas and Ms. Boozer-Strong.
thank you, Dr. Thornton. I think my main point here is those are items that should have been considered in the original design of this facility. It seems like the sleeping quarters, making sure the courses are updated, those are all things that should have been done. And the way that I see it, this is just my perspective, is that if there's a budget for a project, then whatever the necessary changes are that need to be made should be made within the budget of that project. And granted, yes, there are situations where we need to add more money. This project already had an amendment for $320,000. And so this is not a situation, in my head, of course, all my my observation, we approved a contract amount for a certain amount. There was already amendment made. Now there's a significant other amendment made. What I'm saying is that we need to work within the budget that we have and that we have approved and allocated, and sending to the county council to say this is the budget that we have and the budget that we're intending to follow in executing this project.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed. Mr. Thomas.
Once again, Ms. Ahmed has said everything I need to say, so I will.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Ms. Boozer-Strother, and I see one more person, Ms. Queen, and then we hopefully can vote. Ms. Boozer-Strother.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just, the door was open to talk about the value of this program. And I did just want to reiterate after reviewing the deck again, that it is exceptional. I mean, it is teaching our children about the future of climate action. It includes future technologies. We are utilizing those technologies, and it will demonstrate everything that I think, we would like to look at across our system for the future. But I think it's going to be, again, where PGCPS leads in environmental education. And for that reason, I am supporting additional investments in this program.
Thank you. And Ms. Queen, and then hopefully we can vote. Ms. Queen.
Yeah, I just want to say thank everybody for the conversation around this. It's so very important, but I must remind us that it's all about putting the kids first. Mr. Mayor, I definitely always commend you for bringing things that we need to see. I just believe Dr. Golson, your staff need to do a little bit better when we do projects like that, because the handicap, the diversity of the bathrooms, all of that should have been thought about in all of our projects. I mean, one of the things I've been saying is everything should be handicap accessible. And if it was all thought about it, it would have been done in the past. So I do see why it is a little upset about that. But in going forth, we have to realize it is a human mistake along the way. And because the human has made a mistake and we're all not perfect, it's not about harming so our kids won't have. So we need to really support this, because it's not about us, it's about the kids. It's about them having a center that they can use. It's about having an update center where it is diverse, where handicapped, whether, no matter what sexuality you want to be, but everybody can use. So that's one of the reasons why we really need to support it. And we need to understand for our mistakes that have been made by staff, then we need to make sure that these things are thought about again before this happens, when more money is required. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. Mr. Burrows.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to explain my vote. I'm going to vote no on this because, I've walked into several classrooms over the years where the air conditioning wasn't working or the heat wasn't working. And I've always had concerns about this project for that reason. I've been in schools where there have been leaky roofs when it rains. And so we're going to continue to, I thought the initial amount that we were going to spend here was a bit high, but I'm not going to vote to continue to take any resources away from those other projects. Students can't learn if there's no air conditioning or if there's no heat, or if when it rains, it comes in through the class, or there's mold. And so, I think there are some basic necessities that need to be prioritized before we continue to invest even more in this project. So I just wanted to explain my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. And Mr. Murray.
Yeah, kind of just following up on what the vice chairman said. I think that at an amount that large, this is a project that I've pretty much been opposed to since it's been on the CIP. We have so many more critical issues and needs for, when students return, the conditions that our kids are in every single day. And while this is a nice luxury to have, I don't think that it's something that should be coming before those basic necessities for our children. And so that's why we voted no as well.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Thank you so much. And Ms. Williams, and hopefully we can vote. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. I would just like to remind everyone in our last OBAF committee, CIP moment, we discussed that not able to move money from one project to another project just that simply. Once it's approved by the county council and the state, if we decide not to do this, then it goes away. We can't just pull it from one project and then place it on another. I think it's going to be very important that we are looking at the scopes of our projects when it comes to us for design, to fully understand what we're including, so that when we have these discussions about change orders, it's clear where the change comes from. And so this change order is something that we as a system has asked for. This is not something that a contractor has found in the work. And so this is not an unforeseen condition. So I just think that we have to be reminded, voting no on this will not free up money that we move it to another place. So
thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Burrows, and then hopefully we can vote. And I'll call on Dr. Wilson after Mr. Burrows.
I guess I have a question. So Ms. Williams just stated that it is not simple to continue to shift money from one category to the next, but I believe that's what we're doing right now. So, and if I'm wrong, Dr. Golson, can you just let me know? That's my understanding, is that this is our second time increasing this outside of the scope that was approved previously.
So what Ms. Williams is referring to is that this project has been approved at the Interagency for School Construction and by the County Council. So if you all vote no tonight and it goes back to the original amount, that's it. But it's not going to free up any funds to go toward another project because we have to get approval from the IAC and the County Council to make any of those changes. This additional funds here will have to still finally be approved by the IAC and the council, but it has to have board vote first as well. And then of course we have to identify where we're taking those funds. And typically it's from a savings from another project, but you can't take the funds that are allocated for this to use somewhere else. That's what she's actually referencing.
Right, and I guess what I'm saying is just like we are going to go before the IAC and the respective bodies to request additional funding for this project. In my opinion, I would like to go before them and ask for additional funds for kind of the basic necessities.
Let me correct. We're not asking for additional, we're asking for permission to reallocate from a previous project that we did not completely use all the funds for. So we're not asking for extra.
Yeah, I understand that. And I guess
transfer from your bank accounts.
Right. And I guess what I'm saying is if we have the ability to transfer these funds, my position is we should transfer them to do, there are other projects that I think are more critical than this one that we can transfer those funds to support is what I'm trying to communicate.
Right, I got you, which we can definitely consider for next year's list for IC because this one has been approved by the board and has already moved forward to the state. So we won't be able to do it for this year. There's a conversation around next year. It's almost as if, so for Camp Schmidt, I want to say we're at year 3 or 4 with Camp Schmidt. So it's almost as if and I'm just giving this hypothetical, it's almost as if what we would have done is made an investment toward the foundation, the frame and the windows, and then all of a sudden we decide, yep, we're not going to go forward anymore. So the only thing we're going to have is money from the state for the foundation, frame and windows. And if you all decide to vote to move funds somewhere else, then that building just sits there just like that. And then you move funds to somewhere else. That's ultimately what would end up having to happen, is what you're saying.
Thank you, Dr. Golson. And I certainly appreciate the differing views that I'm seeing among the board members regarding this, both in terms of the fiscal issues as well as the staff preparation of this for the board. It also indicates to me the great pressure that the community needs to see among board members, expressed eloquently by our vice chair, just in terms of the backlog, in terms of the fiscal CIP capacity. And that's what the public is, notwithstanding how board members vote tonight. What you're really seeing is the lack of capacity to fund the fiscal needs of our children. So I would not put any interpretation on anybody's vote tonight. It's the $9 billion backlog that we have to ultimately try to wrestle with as board members. And what you're seeing is that tonight. So with that, I'm going to, because of the votes that I've heard, I'm going to ask for Ms. Tate to please call the roll. This is on 5-4. Please call the roll.
Sure. Ms. Ahmed,
No.
Ms. Boozer Struther,
Yes.
Mr. Burrows,
No.
Mr. Montero,
Yes.
Mr. Murray,
No.
Mrs. Queen,
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd,
Yes.
Mr. Swan,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
No.
Mr. Valentine,
Aye.
Mr. Wallace,
Votes aye.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Dr. Thornton.
Yes.
We have 9 ayes, and 6 noes.
Thank you.
Eight.
And, thank you for
Let me see.
the questions, and Dr. Golson, thank you for responding to them.
Dr. Thornton, I think the count was wrong. Can we have Ms. Tate?
The count is off.
I believe it's 8-4.
Correct. And I have 9-4.
9 to 1, 2, 3, 4. 9 to 4. I apologize.
I beg your pardon.
Thank you. Thank you for that correction. Ms. King, the record is 9-4, and thank you everyone for your questions. We'll now move our attention, colleagues, to item 5-6, Mr. Wallace, you have questions about the banking services contract?
No questions. I'm going to have to vote in abstention.
But you're just going to abstain from it, okay. Colleagues, the vote is on item 5.6. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, no. And Mr. Wallace, those abstaining, Mr. Wallace. Ms. King, let the record reflect that it is unanimously approved with the exception of one abstention, 5-6, Mr. Wallace, okay? Colleagues, if you'll turn your attention now to item 6.1, which is a new business first reader. Ms. Ahmed and Ms. Jackson, a new business first reader.
Dr. Thornton, I yield to Ms. Jackson to present this item.
Okay, colleagues, this is a new business first reader and is being introduced not for a debate, but to introduce it as a first reader. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed, and thank you, Dr. Thornton. Colleagues, I have to say I'm really excited about this specific agenda item for a lot of different reasons. But suffice to say, I just kind of want to get into why I feel as though this is important. For those who are unfamiliar with the process for student member of the board, one of the many things we have to do is identify an educational issue of our choice in PGCPS and propose solutions. What catches your eye, why is it important, so on and so forth. And the topic I had actually chose was instructional support for English language learners. In fact, it was actually recommended to me by my grade level administrator, who happened to serve as the administrator for the ESOL department. And what initially started as just 5 slides of information ultimately turned into the premise for my campaign and what I consider the guiding compass of my service now, right? The idea that every student, regardless of their race, age, gender, country of origin, socioeconomic background, and even language proficiency, deserves the support, resources, and opportunities they need to succeed in their own right. Because as it stands now, while we certainly do what we can for English language learners and their families, I think we can all agree that there's a whole lot more that needs to be done and a whole lot more that we can do. The work group that I'm proposing today and putting forth today with board member Ahmed is certainly only a minor step in the direction for what we really need to do for this segment of this community. But I believe wholeheartedly that it's a needed step nonetheless. It brings together a variety of stakeholders to do and execute charges like, examine best practices to close the achievement opportunity gap for immigrant students, to examine existing data and even possibly develop new metrics to look at so we can gauge the effectiveness and efficiency of our ELL program. And from that, to in the end, put forth needed budget and policy recommendations to the board. With that being said, I look forward to the feedback on this item. And I thank you all for just allowing me the opportunity to, advocate on behalf of my immigrant peers and English language learners.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jackson. Colleagues, for the purpose of discussion, I will entertain a motion so that we can discuss it if necessary.
Mr. Chair, I move this item is approved as a first reader item with a request, with the part of the motion being that it be on as second reader on December 10th.
Second.
December 10 is not a it's not a business meeting of the board. I'm not going to debate the motion. So I won't try to do that. I just want to indicate to the board that that's not a business meeting of the board, but the board can do whatever it wants to do. So that's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly seconded. That is the motion that the board is discussing if necessary. Mr. Valentin.
Just a quick question. I saw there's already some members of the group already. How are those members chosen? Just curious.
Ms. Jackson or Ms. Ahmed, how are the members of the proposed work group chosen?
I can speak to that a little bit, and Ms. Jackson can add on if she would like. But we reached out to different folks trying to understand and engage interest from members of the community, and also wanted to make sure that there's some organizational presence there as well. we paid key attention to making sure that there were different stakeholders of folks, but also making sure that the body itself involved a significant involvement of students. And so you'll see that almost half of the population of the focus work group is consistent of students, just under half. And that was kind of our thought process in doing it, but we did try and do the best we could to identify individuals that we thought would be good in either providing a unique perspective or a needed perspective as a part of this process. And I believe, as Ms. Jackson said, if there are feedback items from folks on certain ways to move forward or modifications in whatever way, then we can talk about that as well before it goes to second reader.
Well, just as a point of clarification, Dr.
Go ahead, Mr. Valentine.
It's a general question around working groups. Where does it say in the policy on how members of the working group are chosen? I'm just, are individuals who propose the working group responsible for choosing them, or the board members or the community, or is there more of an open process for those who may have an interest but are not known to us?
I think just speaking to the policy that the board would have to be more involved in the selection of the actual members. These are simply being recommended by the two sponsors, but the board would have to be more involved.
And so if approving it in a subsequent meeting, we were also approving all of those members sort of in aggregate, all the members of the task force collectively.
I think what Ms. Ahmed, hopefully, and I can't speak for her and Ms. Jackson, but as a first reader, hopefully this will initiate a dialogue among the board members subsequent to whatever decision we make in terms of membership, because if the board decides to do this, then we obviously want a membership of a committee that is representative of the board and not just two members of the board.
Okay.
I'm sure this.
I just want to make sure moving forward, if I or some other board member wanted to create one and create a similar body, whether there is a system in place where folks know what to expect or what role they could play in particularly adding members to that group.
No, we're going to adhere to the board policy regarding the formation of work groups. It is a very specific policy in terms of how it's formed and how members get appointed, et cetera. So we'll have to adhere to that. And I don't think anybody would oppose us adhering to that. Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, thanks. This is just a question for clarification for Ms. Ahmed and for Ms. Jackson. I'm very ready to support you on this one, but is the reason for the urgency in getting it on the agenda for the December meeting in an effort to have more time to work with this group through the year? I do understand, I know the early December meeting is typically not a business session for the board, but I can understand the urgency behind it. So am I getting that correct from y'all?
Dr. Thornton, may I?
You may.
Mr. Thomas, I think, yes, you're correct. That is a reason for the urgency. I think another reason for this urgency is that it's actually a very proud thing that we will have if this focus work group goes through, Ms. Jackson as chair of this focus work group. And if that is the case, then as you all know, her term ends in June. And we want to be sure it will take a solid 6 months to make sure that we get through all of the different items that are proposed to discuss and provide recommendations on. And I think it's of utmost importance that Ms. Jackson is in leadership and leading this work for the entirety of the work of the work group.
Thanks, Ms. Ahmed, for that. And so I just want to say I completely agree with that. And for that reason, though our December meeting is not typically a business session, I think that explanation seems to make a lot of sense for me and should for our colleagues. And so I see no reason why we should not at a time where we'll all be together to be able to push something like this forward. So I will be supporting this. And I know there's some others that want to.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Burrow.
Yeah, I just want to say, I've reviewed this document. I think it's extremely thorough. I think the goals are phenomenal, and this is the work that we should be focused on. And so I'm so excited that Ms. Jackson and Ms. Ahmed are working together. I'm so happy to hear that there is a great amount of students that will be leading this group. I think so often it's important to just realize how important our students are and how smart and capable Prince George's County Public School students are. And I can't wait to see what comes out of this. I'm going to support this 100%. And I do believe that the lives of our students who are immigrants and even students who are not immigrants will benefit greatly from this. I cannot wait to see what's fleshed out regarding the ethnic studies curriculum. I think, you know, every child would benefit from that, including our staff. So I just wanted to come on and express my support for this.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Ms. Jackson.
Yeah, so just 2 points I kind of wanted to speak to or address. Firstly, to kind of speak to the urgency and the want or the yearning to have the second reader on the December 10th meeting. Another thing we kind of wanted to keep in mind, if anything, is to pay respect to the time of the students and the educator or teacher that's also serving on the focus work group. As you guys may know, once we get into second semester, once we get into, the springtime and kind of that later half of the school year, there's a myriad of things that start occurring, whether it's testing, whether it's, people trying to close out for the school year. And we put in our diligence to draft a timeline that really touched on the variety of goals that we had for the focus work group. And that's part of the urgency. The second thing I want to touch on is, while we're definitely and certainly open to taking feedback and suggestions in regards to who serves on the focus work group, I do want to say that the policy doesn't, policy 8100 doesn't specifically outline how the selection of the focus work group members is made. It just says that the proposal has to include recommended focus group members, and that those focus group members need to submit a resume. And that proposal is then submitted to the board chair within 10 days, before the meeting and such. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Ms. Williams, and then Ms. Boozer-Strutton.
I'm always so impressed with our student members of the board. They come with such great thoughtfulness that it's always a pleasure to work with such students and to see what we can develop in Prince George's County Public Schools. So as I read through the goals of this focus work group, and I want to know, what does that look like to you? What do you think you will be presenting to, or your recommendation in April? What will that look like? Can you give me a little detail, Ms. Jackson?
Absolutely, for sure. I think part of what we're looking to really develop is recommendations that are grounded in the experiences and the feedback of direct stakeholders to the group that we're looking to examine, which is English language learners. The reason why I think that's most important to say is because, again, we all agree that this isn't, we need to pay more attention to the needs of English language learners, but it seems like for a lot of us, we kind of throw our hands up and say, well, we're not really sure where to tackle it, where to start chipping at the iceberg. So the fact of the matter is, by bringing in these stakeholders who either experience the issues that we're talking about firsthand, or they themselves will be, subject to the very issues that we're talking about within the focus work group, they would be able to provide much more substantive policy and budget recommendations in regards to the different areas outlined within the proposal.
Okay, so you're talking about providing recommendations to the school system on how to operate, and I think that could be some value there. And you're talking about surveying students to get information on their thoughts and perspective. Is that what you're talking about? Basically doing a survey and having focus work groups of people to have discussions to bring information back to the school system. That's what you're looking to do?
Well, surveying would only be one element and one aspect of what the focus work group is hoping to do. And when we talk about executing, communications with these immigrant families and, English language learning students, that's really integral and really important because, again, it speaks to further understanding the needs of the English language learning community, which is initially, the entire purpose and function of the focus work group.
So I hear data collection, information collection, and then compiling that into some format that is presented to the board. Is that what I'm hearing?
Those are the elements contained within the proposal. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, I see one more person, and hopefully we can then vote. Ms. Boozer-Strother and then Ms. Quinn.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thornton, and thank you, Ms. Jackson, for bringing this forward. And we just heard a lot more than I expected. Thinking we were getting to the next meeting on this. Procedurally, I just don't, Dr. Thornton, can you clarify where we are? I mean, wanting to vote yes to move past first reader is different than stating we're having another board meeting. So I just don't understand procedurally how this is going to work.
I'm going to accommodate whatever decision the board makes. If the board decides to, it's in the board's purview to decide what it wants to do, and I'm not going to object to that if the board decides to do that.
Just a point of clarification that we did.
Just a moment, Ms. Ahmed. Ms. Ahmed, I'm going to recognize Ms. Queen and then Ms. Ahmed.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to say that to actually do this on December 10th, it shouldn't even take us 10 or 15 minutes for that decision. So it should be no problem for us to do that. But I also just want to say, as a board member who represent Largo International School, and Ms. Boozer-Strother, you represent the school out there north. I walk my schools each year since I've been a board member. I talk to my students when I go to when I go up to Largo International. It's so interesting to meet the students, and some who have been only in the country for a day or two, and some have been for a while. But we have to realize that we are a diverse school system, and we represent so many different students, and we need to hear and make sure that we are going outside the 9 dots for each and every one of them. So I believe, ain't no thinking, I know it's a great idea for us to, to hear from all. I know a lot of the community leaders who are already here, we can speak out. Like I can speak out. I've always spoke out for my students because I was born and raised here. So, from a PTA president to moving forward to where I'm in today, I'm still fighting and speaking out. But some of them are just coming into the country and they don't have anyone to speak out. So I believe that this is a great idea, and I'm definitely willing to support it 100%.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. Ms. Ahmed and then Mr. Swan, and hopefully we can vote.
Just a point of clarification. The point of clarification was that we have done business in the past in advance of the CEO's presentation. I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, but that was something that did occur previously.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed. Mr. Swan and then Mr. Valentin.
I'd just like to add a comment, or really just a consideration to Ms. Jackson and Ms. Ahmed. I think this is really great. It's certainly well needed, and certainly in District 4, particularly Blanesboro High School. I would just encourage you, as you consider the membership, to consider the population that you're trying to serve, and just making sure that you're considering inside the Beltway as well as outside the Beltway. I just noticing just the number of students that you have, which is awesome, I think. But I think it also would be great value for you to have insight from those students that I think will have a great input and are very active in their communities inside the Beltway, particularly at Blanesboro High School and Northwestern. So I just want to throw that out there as a comment, and really appreciate you putting this forward, and look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valentin.
Quick question. So what is the motion on the floor?
Motion on the floor is to approve this as a first reader and have it added to the December 10th meeting of the board.
So that December 10th thing is in the motion currently?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, colleagues, I don't see any other comments. Before we do vote, I would say that notwithstanding how the board votes, I would, Dr. Golson, certainly ELL, as far as I'm concerned, as chair, must be in part of your expected performance outcome as the CEO. And certainly to the Academic Achievement Committee, I certainly want to make sure that there's a marriage between this initiative and the work of the Academic Achievement Committee. I would not think the Board of Education would want to assign this critical area of expectation to a work group separate and apart from Dr. Golson and the Academic Achievement Committee. That is very important. And those two things are not separable necessarily, but Ms. Jackson and Ms. Ahmed, and I assume that you would see those two things as being complementary because they must be. Sometimes I think the public may give the impression that we have no interest in this and we need a work group to do it. As far as I'm concerned, Dr. Gosen, this is a major performance expectation that we have of you, which is a part of your performance goals. And the Academic Achievement Committee, this is a major expectation that this board has of you. And we want to keep those two things aligned. I think that is critical. And I think Ms. Jackson and Ms. Ahmed, we certainly want to build out, I will certainly request as one board member, not the chair, a building out of the membership. Because this is a critical statement that we will be making to the, I always say to this board, we are a national board of education. And what we do with our Latino community is a national statement. And anything we do has to be, keep that in mind. It's not just Prince George's. We have an opportunity to make a national statement as to what we do that no one else does. And that is serve this community. So I think all those things to me, colleagues, are marriageable if we can keep those in mind as we spend the next 2 weeks kind of interacting with each other, going back and forth about recommending additional members if necessary, giving Ms. Jackson, Ms. Ahmed some ideas in terms of enhancements. With that, I'm going to ask for a vote. I think I see acclamation on this. I'll try it. If it doesn't work, then we'll call for a vote. Those in favor of moving this as a first reader, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, please say no. Let the record reflect, Ms. King, that it's unanimous for the board. And thank you again, Ms. Jackson, for your leadership in this regard. Colleagues, we'll move now to item 8.0, which is an emergency item being offered on behalf of our Policy and Governance Committee, led by Ms. Boozer-Strother and Ms. Ahmed. Ms. Boozer-Strother, I will now recognize you.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Dr. Thornton. The Policy and Governance Committee brings forward to our board colleagues this emergency item to affirm our Maryland Assembly legislative priorities for 2021. These priorities include the override of the governor's veto of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, full funding and implementation of the Built to Learn Act, and additional resources to mitigate the substantial impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on local school system budgets. And Dr. Thornton and Dr. Goldson, I would like to thank both of you for your outstanding representation of the board and school system in Annapolis the past 2 years, and for your work moving forward as we communicate to the legislature the urgency of equitable funding of public education in the state of Maryland and the urgency of funding for school maintenance and construction. So thank you for allowing us to bring this as an emergency item.
Thank you, colleagues. You have this now before you for a vote as an emergency item, which is the legislative priorities of this Board of Education. And before we call for a vote, I'm going to recognize Mr. Burrows.
Yes, I want to thank the Policy Legislative Committee for this. Especially, I agree with all of them, especially number 3 with the impact that COVID has had on our budget. I did want to add one that, and I haven't called anyone ahead of time. This is just something that I really believe in that I want to offer, and the vote will be what it is. But I'd like to add I'd like to move to number 5, and that is to move to a fully elected school board. I think it's so important that in a county like Prince George's, the most affluent African-American community in the entire world, and with the growing Latino population, very diverse county that we live in, I believe that our voters are smart enough to elect their school board representatives, and those school board representatives have the responsibility to be responsive to the community. And so democracy is very important. And so I just want to, I move to amend that to be number 5, is that this board supports a fully elected school board.
Second, especially if I can be elected as chair. Yes, I second it.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. I'm trying to figure out how to handle this. This is a motion to amend the committee's report to add an item indicating the board's support for a fully elected school board. Any comments on, any opposition or comments to the proposed amendment to the committee's report? Hearing none. So we now have 6, is that right? We would have 6 items.
Dr. Thornton,
Yes.
Yeah, I need to understand some stuff.
question, are we going to vote on the amendment separately, or are you just going to have the amendment attacked on without?
No, we have to vote to add to the committee's report. The vote would be to add the committee's report, and then we would, if it passes, the committee report is adjusted. If it doesn't pass, we return back to the 5 items. Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, I just wanted to add my support to the motion that has been put forward by the Vice Chair and Ms. Queen. In reflecting, I'm, thinking about, how I had the opportunity to actually bring this in committee, and I probably should have raised this then, because this is something that I believe in and care about as well. And so I do just want to add that I will be supporting this, and I also want to add that many of us at various different points, I know have made statements about this specific issue. And so I do hope that that is reflected in folks' positions as they vote on this motion. I'm even reflecting about how 2 years ago, when I was running for this position, the county executive herself at the time was not county executive, but was in support of a fully elected board. So just wanted to bring some of these things to light as we are going to make this vote. But I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Colleagues, the vote is on the motion to amend, which is to add support for an elected school board. I'm going to ask Ms. Tate to please call the roll. This is to amend the committee's report to add that item. Please call the roll.
Ms. Ahmed,
Aye.
Ms. Boozer Struther,
Yes.
Mr. Burrows,
Aye.
Mr. Montero,
No.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mrs. Queen,
Definitely.
Mrs. Shepherd, Mrs. Shepherd,
No.
Mr. Swan,
No.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
No.
Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I tried to jump in here. I want to thank Mr. Burrows for bringing this up. I'm in support. I have an employment conflict, so I have to abstain from the entire discussion, the entire motion, but I'm thankful for the offering of the amendment.
Thank you, sir.
Mrs. Williams,
No.
Dr. Thornton.
No.
I'm sorry, I skipped Miss Jackson earlier. Miss Jackson.
Aye.
Okay,
Would
give
this
me
be
one
considered
moment.
a personnel matter,
No.
Dr. Thornton?
No, I'm going to rule that she has the right to vote. And keep in mind that this is an emergency item, colleagues, so it requires 2/3. Go ahead. Ms. Tate.
Okay, I'm coming, 1 second. Okay, we have 8 ayes, 5 nays, and 1 abstain.
It does require, any vote on this item requires a supermajority of the board. So we'll now return to Mr.
I have
Burrows.
a point of order. Is the attorney on the line?
He's not.
Okay. Mr. Chair, the rule around emergencies, and I can pull up let me pull up the policy. Once something is adopted on the agenda as an emergency, the threshold to amend it doesn't change to a supermajority. When the board approved the item on the agenda, that's when we determine whether or not we're going to vote on it as an emergency. When we approve the agenda approved.
Mr. Burrows, as I view it, the board's vote on this, the substance of it and any amendments is an emergency action being taken by the board. The board is taking an emergency action on an item that was not on the agenda, is being added because as an emergency. So any action we take on it will require the board to act in an emergency capacity, requiring an unusual 2/3 requirement for the Board of Education.
Thornton, would you mind justifying your decision by using policy? Because respectfully,
And the policy I'm using is, this is an emergency item as is indicated on the board agenda that we adopted. It's an emergency item. So what I'm interpreting is any action that the board takes regarding this item requires not only a simple majority, but it requires a 2/3 majority, because any action is an emergency action. That's how I'm interpreting it.
Dr. Thornton, could you state the policy and the provision of the policy in which you are using for this basis?
Yeah, I'm saying that emergency items require, I don't think there's any debate about that, 2/3 vote of the board, emergency items, emergency actions. And I'm not separating any decision within that emergency item as being anything other than an emergency action. Everything we do regarding this, Mr. Gross, is an emergency action, anything. And because it is an emergency action, meaning the board did not have a chance to know that you were going to propose this, which, by the way, I'll just say for the record, I support. I simply do not support the board on the night of the meeting, having no discussion of it, not discussed in committee. So that's my only opposition. You know, I support an elected board. I have no problem. I simply don't think the board, and it should, I'd be asked in an emergency setting without any knowledge. I didn't know it was coming. Board members did not know it was coming. That's all. And that's the logic. Now what we can do, if you object to the ruling of the chair, so we can move forward, right? You can say, I object to the ruling of the chair. We'll vote on the board, and then we'll move forward.
Dr. Thornton, I believe that an amendment requires a simple majority. I believe that you're ruling in a manner that is inconsistent with board policy, and I would like our lawyer to provide an opinion on this. And if the
okay, we can add that. That's good, and I fully support that. We can get the lawyer's view and then put it on the agenda for the 10th. We can do that.
Can you clarify the count too as well? I think the count was wrong, just to make sure the count was right. And I know it's at least 7, but I know she said 8. I believe it was 7. Just want to make sure.
And I believe the count was 7-6.
I'm sorry?
I believe the count was 7-6.
That's what
Mr. Wallace abstained.
I'm sorry. Okay, you gotta get that straight, Ms. Tate. The count is what, 7-6? Let's do this because colleagues, sometimes the substance of agreement gets caught up in parliamentary differences, and I don't on this critical issue, right? On this critical issue, because I frankly want the legislature to re-examine and look at the structure of this board. You all know that. First knows that everybody knows. I don't want the board's concern about this to get caught up in parliamentary back and forth. So what I would recommend us that we do is, ask for an opinion regarding this. We can add it to our agenda for the 10th, and we can move forward. Ms. Williams.
Every action that we take here on this board is important. And I don't ever want to make a decision on something that is just thrown at me 2 minutes before I'm taking a vote. That is why I voted no on this. I think that something this important, we could come together as a board and support this unanimously with some forethought and the ability to collectively decide on how we're going to proceed. For us to be, again, put something in front of us with no information, no pre-conversation, I think that devalues the work of this board. And so I think we need to look at the structure of the board, but I don't want to move something forward with no conversation. So that's why
Okay. All right, colleagues. Now the vote again, Ms. King. What was the vote on the motion?
It was 7-6. 7-6.
7-4 or 7? How was it?
7-6.
7-4 or against?
I'm sorry, 7-4, 6 against, and 1 abstention.
Okay. So the vote, colleagues, on the motion is 7-4, 6 against, and 1. And the issue is only whether or not it requires the supermajority. What I'm trying to get us to, and I'll recognize my colleagues, I'm not trying to shut you all down, is that so that we won't get up into a parliamentary debate here tonight. We can seek legal counsel on that point and then we'll try to deal with it on the 10th as opposed to engaging in a back and forth tonight. Mr. Med, Mr. Thomas, and Ms. Queen.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. I just wanted to say it is the right of any member of this board to make a motion that they want to make. And I didn't know about this before the meeting, but I'm wholeheartedly in support of what has been proposed. And I think that another piece of this is that this is a conversation that has been going on since the change of the structure of the board back in 2013. But regardless of that, any member of this board has the right to make a motion that they choose and that they will. And I don't want anyone here to feel like they can't do that. And that it's not okay, because it is okay and it's your right. And that's all I wanted to say.
And I think Mr. Med, as I call him, Mr. Thomas is right. I think Mr. Med is right. I think the only caution that we'll get some opinion on is whether or not a board member can do that. The board member has a right, but then the board has an interest in making sure that there is a supermajority to consider unexplained and unanticipated actions by the board. That's all. Those two things accompany. Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, I had a question first, which is that, will there be any impact by us voting on this in December? I mean, the legislature started in January, so.
No, we'll simply, whatever the board decides tonight, we'll simply be able to augment our legislative priorities after the board takes its final action, if whatever the board decides tonight. Ms. Queen.
Great. Oh, sorry, Dr. Thorne, I wasn't done. I just wanted to add, wanted to express the same thoughts that my colleague just shared. We all have the right to be able to bring any motion to our meetings. I understand the desire to want to discuss things beforehand, but I just want to also reiterate, this wasn't something that came to me beforehand. I heard it here. And, one thing that I do just want to address is, unlike many of the decisions that do come before us, whether it's related to student learning, charters, all kinds of different things, this is not really one that is necessarily a data-driven decision that we're looking at specific metrics here. Like Ms. Ahmed said, this is something that we've been discussing for years. So to say that it's coming to us just in the middle of this meeting, is a little bit of a stretch. Just because I think even the chair stated that he has his own personal stance on this. So I do just want to add that, and that we are able to make motions at any point, and we should all feel free to do so.
Yeah, I completely agree. The only point I'm making, Mr. Thomas, and I'll call on Ms. Payne and Mr. Burrows, is that it is very important when the board considers something like this, or if possible, it may not be possible because board members may forget to bring things up, is to run it through our committees and have a chance to deliberate, get the public's input, get colleagues' input. That's all I'm looking for as board chair. And if for some reason that can't happen, then a board member does have the right to introduce whatever they want to introduce. I'm simply suggesting when it is introduced as an emergency, the board has the right to expect something other than a majority to do it. That's
understandable. And one other question: is it true that that we will be presenting to the delegation tomorrow? Because that was actually at the root of my.
We will be presenting the board's priorities to the delegation, which can easily, as we always do, modify.
Thank you,
Ms. Queen, and then Mr. Burrows, and hopefully we can vote.
See me stretching my neck and about to put my boxing gloves on, you guys, because this is something I'm definitely going to start fighting for. I mean, I wish I would have thought of it, and I'm glad Mr. Burrows realized it. For us to say that it was the last minute, our voters have been talking about this forever. A lot of people ran on this. A lot of elected leaders, not only did our county executive run on this. This is so important that we represent the people. And one of the things that really bothered me was not even a week or two ago that it was Prince George's County Public Schools Board of Education was in the news saying that our board members vote the way they are told to vote by the county executive, what really makes us look so bad. So some changes are good changes, you guys. So don't look at it as being something that was last minute, that was thrown in. Whether it didn't pass right now, it doesn't matter. But the point is, change is going to eventually have to come. And we have to realize that we've been hearing about this for so long. So for someone, when you guys to say that, it was a last minute thing, people have been talking about an all elected board for so long, and it is so needed so it can represent the people. So I just want to say this is something that I'm going to continue to fight for as long as I have breath on this earth, whether I'm on a board or not, to get all this.
Okay, all right, colleagues. So we have 3 more members, and hopefully we can move forward. Mr. Burrows, Ms. Williams, and Mr. Murray.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank you for the suggestion that you made, and that is for us to take this up at the December 10th meeting. I'm in full agreement with that. And so I just wanted to thank you for offering that. Also went back to the policy because I think that's important for us to do. The bylaw of the board 9360 has a section on emergencies. And it says that the board, by 2/3 vote, may decide to treat something as an emergency. Once a matter is placed on the agenda as an emergency, a simple majority of the whole board is needed to pass the item. So once, as I described earlier, but I didn't have the text of the policy in front of me, but once the board approves the agenda, it only requires a simple majority to pass it, and that is in board policy 9360 under the section of first reader, second reader, and emergencies. When it comes up on December the 10th, I just want us to all be on the same page that it'll just require a majority.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Burrows, if you would, and I think we're reaching a consent, because see, colleagues, this is a very important issue. I said to you all, at least as one board member, I've always supported an elected board. It's how we as a board, see, the most important thing for the board is to come to the community together on issues like this. This is what I'm most concerned about. When we go to Annapolis on this question, we must go together with the people, and we must get the people behind this. The people allowed this policy to be put in place. Keep that in mind. They allowed it, right? And we're gonna have to speak to the people together. Just because you can get a vote tonight doesn't mean anything will happen. See what I'm saying to you? This is all I'm pleading with. The board this is why education, us coming together as a board, us speaking to the legislature as a board, to the people of Prince George's County. Otherwise, it is simply 7 to 6 on a board, on a meeting at night, which really is not going to mean anything in terms of getting what we want. So I'm asking us to treat it in that way if we really want to get this done. And Mr. Burrows, I would ask if you would because I think we're reaching a point here. If you would hold your proposed amendment until the 10th, we can vote on the 5 and then come back to this one on the 10th.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you. So colleagues, we're removing this item. We'll come back to it on the 10th, and we're now voting on the 5 priorities.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair, I believe there are 4 priorities recommended by the committee.
So colleagues, the vote is on the committee's report, which includes 4 priorities. And Dr. Golson and I will present those priorities, at least I will present those priorities tomorrow to the delegation chairs. If we have to modify it to add an additional item, then we'll certainly do it. Those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposing, please say no. Ms. King, let the record reflect that.
Abstention from Wallace.
There's 1 abstention from Mr. Wallace, right? Otherwise, the Board of Education is unanimous in its vote. Thank you, colleagues. This was a very important discussion. And thank you, Mr. Burrows, for your input. Colleagues, we're going to now have points of personal privilege. And I want to, at this point, on behalf of the Board of Education, recognize 2 of our members. I want to recognize Mr. Swan and Mr. Wallace. This is their last meeting as members of the Board of Education. I want to, on behalf of this board, thank them for their distinguished service to the Board of Education. The Board of Education has issued to them plaques for their distinguished service and leadership. And I want to, they're brief, and I want to read the plaques that's being presented to each of our colleagues. The first one is being presented to Mr. Brian M. Swan, board member for District 4, January 20th to December 20th. As the representative of District 4, you provided advocacy that contributed to the examination of issues and the passage of policies, securing additional state education funding, passage of alternative funding for school construction, enhanced operational and fiscal accountability that will enhance the education, development, and collegiate and career success of our students. We thank you for your exemplary public service and leadership, your continuing long tradition of outstanding service by other members of the Board of Education. We are greatly appreciative of your public service and dedication to the mission of Prince George's County and its public school system and the people and children of Prince George's County. This plaque from the Board of Education is presented on the 12th day of November by the Prince George's County Board of Education. Mr. Swan, thank you for your service. I'm going to next present the plaque to Mr. Wallace, and if my colleagues after that have any comments, the board will then entertain them. The next award for distinguished public service is presented to Mr. K. Alexander Wallace. We want to thank you, Mr. Wallace, for your exemplary public service and leadership, continuing the long tradition of outstanding service by board members. As the elected representative of District 7, you provided principled advocacy that contributed to the examination of issues and passage of policies, especially involving equity, prohibition of male shaming practices, state education funding that will enhance the education development and collegiate career development of our students. We are extremely proud of you, your public service to the people of Prince George's County, and your dedication to the mission of Prince George's County's Board of Education and its students. The plaque is presented to Mr. Wallace on the 12th day of November, 2020, on behalf of the Prince George's County Board of Education. And at this point, I'm going to give the floor to first Mr. Wallace for any comments that he might want to make, and then to Mr. Swan. Mr. Wallace.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a small town in East Texas in the early 1900s. It was a small town of no more than about 1,000 men, women, and children who were all Black. It was a town so small it had its own economy, its own church, its own school. And this town was so small, in fact, that it only had 5 streets: 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and Main Street. One afternoon in the dead of summer, a group of the town's men came rushing back into town on their horses. And the men could be heard in the town shouting that the Klan is coming and telling everybody to pack up everything because the Klan was coming. And they were right. There was a renegade army of the Texas Ku Klux Klan about an hour out, and word had gotten around to the group of townsmen that this army was on its way into the town to burn every building, to kill every man, and assault every woman. And this particular army was 50 men deep and was known in East Texas as the Feared 50. And as the town of 1,000 men, women, and children started to pack up what little belongings they could, the summer heat in Texas started to drop and raindrops began to fall from the sky. And soon enough, there was a massive summer storm. That day, during a rainstorm, 999 Black East Texans would leave their quiet community. Only one person stayed behind. It was an elderly widowed woman named Hattie. Hattie had lived too long and grew too tired of packing up everything she could, leaving her house behind, and keep moving west for safety. So as the rain began to move on, Hattie could hear the shouts of the Feared 50 coming in through the abandoned town. It was at this point that Hattie got up out of her rocking chair that was on her porch, and she started walking towards Main Street from her house on 4th Street. But before she did, she reached inside her front door, and she grabbed a broomstick to grip onto as she walked. And she began to walk towards the center of town. She was holding up the bottom of her house gown as her feet stepped deeper and deeper into that Texas mud. A few minutes later, she was met by the Feared 50 in the middle of Main Street. On her right was the town's church, where her son was the pastor, and on her left was the town school, where her daughter was the principal. Frustration, not fear, filled Hattie's heart that day as she scanned the line of 50 angry Klansmen who had all intention of murdering hundreds of Blacks that night. One of the 50 men, who was clearly the leader, got up off his saddle and he walked towards Hattie, and she did not flinch or blink. And he got so close that she could smell the sweat and the whiskey on his clothes and his breath. The leader had grabbed Hattie by her old shoulders, and he told her, "Old lady, now me and my men have traveled far and wide to find your little village. And I hope you don't think you can get rid of us that easily, because I don't think you know what you're going to do with that broomstick against me and my men. But you know how this is going to end tonight for you." Hattie looked him up and down, and she took another scan of the other 49 men, and then she grabbed him by his shoulder. She leaned in and she whispered with her old, tired self, "Sir, if you and your men have traveled so far to burn down this town and to kill this old lady, then you go ahead and do it. Yes, I know exactly how this story ends tonight, but at least I can die right here in this Texas mud, knowing that you knew exactly where I stood." Hattie would go on to die that night, but her story lives deep inside of me, as I'm sure it does with anyone else who has had to make the choice of either avoiding defeat and fleeing out of fear, or walking with conviction towards a self-inflicted failure for the greater good. I truly believe that Hattie thought as I do, that there is a certain promise of a better tomorrow in the good work that we do today, as well as the tough lessons learned from our yesterdays, so long as it is done with pride, passion, and purpose. Mr. Chairman, Dr. Golston, colleagues, Prince George's County, in closing, I'll say this. May God continue to watch over our school system and those serving in it and being served by it. And may he continue to abundantly bless you all and all those connected to you. Thank you very much.
Mr. K. Alexander Wallace, thank you very much on behalf of the Board of Education. I will now give the floor to Mr. Swan for any comments that he might want to make.
Wow, right? Hard to follow that. Thank you. Dr. Thornton, I thought you were going to go in alphabetical order, so I would have been first. I was supposed to go first that time.
That's true. That's true.
But no, first though, before I get into my comments, I want to ask for a point of privilege. Yesterday was Veterans Day, the day before Marine Corps birthday. I think it's only appropriate, certainly in the time that we're in our country, that we recognize our veterans that have served, that maybe our employees, maybe parents of our children across our county, that we salute them and say thank you for their service. As a combat veteran myself, I just think it's important that we don't make sure that we recognize the sacrifice that our servicemen and women and families are doing to this day. And so I just ask for my colleagues in that recognition there.
Thank you, Mr. Swan, for bringing that to our attention, and I'm sure that you express the sentiments of this Board of Education.
Yep, absolutely.
Please proceed.
Yep. And so in closing, first, I just want to say, first, let me give a thank you first to my Lord and Savior, really for allowing me to serve with integrity and courage through this process. First, I want to certainly thank my children and my family for their sacrifice and supporting me through this whole journey. It's been certainly a journey that I appreciate and learned a lot, and feel very passionate about. To you, Chairman Dr. Thornton, and to CEO Dr. Golston, I want to thank you for your sound leadership, your steadfast focus, your unwavering commitment to our schools. I will serve beside you any day of the week, and please know that. I want to also say thank you to my board colleagues, for those of you who take your roles very seriously and serve with your minds and your hearts. As a parent, as well as a product of Prince George's County Public Schools, I salute those of you that really set a positive example of serving our community. But most importantly, I want to say thank you to all the parents, the teachers, the administrators, the communities within District 4 and the community leaders across our gorgeous county. Thank you for serving with me. It's been an unbelievable experience these last several months, and certainly through this pandemic. But please understand that this is not goodbye. This is simply the beginning of the next chapter. So many of you have been awoken through our conversations, through our interactions, through our service together. And your presence automatically liberates others. Your power is beyond measure. As a Marine, as a father, as a man of faith, I've learned and I live by a creed. And that creed bonds us through service to one another. This creed says that I will bring truth in the darkness of lies. I will serve with commitment and consistency, even on the path of deceit. But most of all, I will serve with deliberate and obedient patience, for my destiny has already been ordered. And so it's this creed that we get our strength, and I will continue to serve. And I want to say thank you all with love in my heart. Semper Fidelis. Let's get to work. Thank you.
Thank you, board members Swan and Wallace, for those eloquent comments and goodbyes to the Board of Education. We thank both of you for your service. Colleagues, we will now move to a motion to approve actions taken by this board in executive session. The board met in executive session tonight to receive a report from our CEO regarding the administration of our school system. The board discussed personnel matters regarding the appointment, employment, removal of certain employees and officials over whom we have jurisdiction. The board received legal advice regarding legal matters pending and potential litigation. And finally, the board met to discuss investigative proceedings or actual or possible criminal conduct. I would now like to receive a motion to adopt the actions taken approve the actions taken in executive session. Motion moved.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded by Ms. Shepherd and Mr. Wallace that we approve action taken in executive session. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposing, no. Ms. King, let the record reflect that the vote is unanimous. At this point, I'm going to defer to Mr. Wallace for a motion to adjourn the board meeting.
Mr. Wallace.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the last time, I want to move adjourn this wonderful meeting.
Very good. It's been properly moved by Mr. Wallace and seconded by Ms. Queen, which they both do so well, especially Ms. Queen, that the Board of Education adjourn this meeting. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, no. Ms. King, let the record reflect is unanimous. And colleagues, mask on from a safe social distance. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you all on the 10th. Thank you all. Bye-bye.